And okay, so the recording is on.
Okay.
So thank you. So I guess we'll get started. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. Thank you. I would like to welcome Liz from the Middletown Township Public Library, and would like to give a big hearty welcome to Rachel Tansey. Rachel is the Senior Family and Community Health Services Extension Associate. And she is going to discuss tea. So thank you again, Rachel, and welcome. I'm going to mute myself and monitor the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This program today was actually created by a colleague of mine for our series of functional health, functional foods for health. And we had done the chocolate program in the past, and this one is specifically on tea. And we will go through, the ins and outs of that and some of the background and history of it. But before we get started, I just wanted to let you know, if you're not familiar, about our program and our organization here. We are Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and we have 3 departments: the Agriculture and Natural Resources Department, the 4-H Youth Development Department, and then my Department of Family and Community Health Sciences, where we focus on nutrition, health, and wellness. We have partners, obviously, with Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, the County Board of Chosen Commissioners, as well as the National Institute for Food and Agriculture and USDA. So we are also an affirmative action equal opportunity employer. And just to give you a little background on myself, my undergraduate degree is in nutrition from Rutgers, and also my master's degree is in holistic health from Georgian Court. So this slide I like to put up now, just simply if you wanted to write down my email, or you could always email Liz or whoever the contact at the library is if you had questions that come to you after or anything of the sort, but I just wanted to put this up here. So I'm going to switch the slides quickly to here. All right, so being that, as I mentioned, a colleague of mine created this program, we are going to look at it through this lens. And I just want to, I don't know if this is blocking your view, so I'm going to kind of move that. Okay, so tea. Tea is considered a functional food, in which that a functional food in and of itself is essentially the potential benefit of a food to your health when it's consumed as a part of a varied diet. And according to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, functional foods can include whole foods, as well as any other foods that might be fortified or enriched or enhanced. So we're talking specifically today about tea. And let's go here. And I just wanted to go over quickly the objectives with you that we're hoping will increase your knowledge about plant origins, some of the historical facts, and the processing and preparation of tea. Hopefully you'll get a better understanding on the research that's currently going on for tea and possibly those health benefits that are included, and also identify the recommendations for including tea as part of your healthful diet. So tea, some of the terms here. Tea in and of itself is a beverage produced by steeping in freshly boiled water the young leaves and leaf buds of the tea plant. There's actually a plant called Camellia sinensis, and this is a true tea. Some other things are just a beverage that is made by pouring the boiling water over dried flowers or leaves, which would be a tisane. We often interchange these words. I understand, I do it myself sometimes, because even packaging and marketing even interchange those words. But I just wanted to give you the exact terminology and let you understand what the difference is. Because, oops, as we go down here, this picture right here is a lovely picture of a tea farm with Mount Fuji in the background. But here with the terminology, it looks like we're actually missing a slide. I'm not sure where it went. I will just talk to you about the Camellia sinensis, that it is the shrub that tea comes from. So I don't see it. She must have taken it out of her slides. As I mentioned, this was created by Sherry. So it is a green evergreen shrub, like you can see here in these pictures, that grows in a multitude of places, but it is actually kind of pruned so it sort of fans out for easily picking of the leaves. And it can be anywhere from 4 to 6 feet high when cultivated, but they really prune it. In the wild, it can get over to like 30 feet. It's more like a tree shrub, but they really prune it to keep it kind of nice and small so that it's easily harvested. It grows in some of our subtropical climates that are monsoon-like climates that are wet, hot summers, cool, dry winters, and it really has a nice fragrant flower. There's a picture coming up that I'll show you that blooms in the fall. So this photo here is one that's cultivated with the tea bushes, and you can see how the new little buds are growing on the top, the nice light green area right here. And this is how it grows in the jungles of the eastern Himalayas, and it was domesticated, as I mentioned, the way it was pruned and grown for easily harvesting. Okay. So this is that flower, as I mentioned. It's a beautiful little white flower, has a lovely fragrance, and it blooms in the fall. So going over our tea consumption, about 2,000 years ago or so, it was in Southeast Asia that it was found and used as more of like a solid food. People were chewing on it, the leaves, and found some of, probably by seeing some of the animals doing the same, that people sort of said, oh, you know, maybe we should do the same. And a lot of religious communities in Asia were the first to use the tea leaves to make a beverage. It was probably done by accident, where it was dropped into some boiling or hot water and created this beverage. But by around the 16th century, half the world's population was drinking tea. It was kind of a wonderful phenomenon that sort of spread fast and all over, that it really surpassed the infusion of other drinks like hot chocolates and things like that, that has so many of the positive attributes as we're going to go over in a moment. So those attributes we were discussing can be produced quite cheaply. It is a plant that grows pretty fast as well, and its bearing of a new leaf is in about every 6 weeks. So you can kind of cultivate it and harvest it and then get a nice new crop in a quick amount of time. Very easy to prepare. I'm sure if you're familiar with loose tea leaves, you can easily see how that is so quickly to prepare. And then we also obviously have some tea bags that are nice and fragrant and have a great taste as well. You really only need a small amount while you're preparing it, so it's not really something that you're going to need copious amounts of tea leaves in order to get that distinct flavor, and it helps with the cost and the production as well. It grows in that large range of climates, as I was mentioning, typically central China or all the way to East Africa. And there's different areas, as long as it has that like moist climate that can handle the growth, and then a dry, cooler winter. Stores very well. Most of our tea drinkers know this. It's quite nice to be able to just open your pantry and find your storage of tea whenever you need it. And it's fairly safe to drink. I wouldn't really say there's too much of an issue. The caffeine levels aren't all that high, and we'll go over that in a few minutes as well. While I love the ceremony of a tea, you know, having a cup of tea, sitting, you know, enjoying the warmth of the mug, even an iced tea in the summer, a nice cool iced tea, it's a relaxing feeling. It brings a sense of relaxation and positivity. And of course, it tastes good. So some of those early uses of tea, just to go over a little bit of that. In Taoism and Buddhism in the East, they found that tea actually helped them meditate better because it helped with mental acuity. So that was really a great finding. They were able to have a better meditation practice and really focus on what they were looking to focus on. It's also found that some of the medicinal purposes would include ailments such as helping with fatigue, possibly repairing eyesight. I'm not sure what the research behind that, but this is, you know, back in the day. And then it was even used for alleviating some rheumatoid, rheumatic pain, as well as complaints of headache, heart, liver, and stomach for, you know, just ailments such as that. So it's interesting that some of the medicinal purposes it was used, I mean, honestly, whenever I'm feeling down, give me a cup of tea. I drink tea a lot, but whenever I'm feeling down and ill, even my kids have learned, oh, let's make a cup of tea. Let's make a cup of tea, kind of whatever the ailment is. Let's make a cup of tea. It's again, it's that sense, it's the mental thought process of the whole ceremony of the tea, but then also it does actually have some of those medicinal purposes. So that's wonderful. Tea has also been used over the years and traded as currency, where they sort of make bricks of tea. And it's actually kind of still practiced today over in Central Asia, that the brick of tea can be used as a currency. And it's often been used as a primary nutritional intake, which sounds interesting, but there was a concoction of water, salt, and fat mixed with milk and butter and roasted as a meal in Tibet, where they would drink up to 70 to 80 cups of tea per day as their main source of nutrition. So that's interesting to note too, that it was basically a meal instead of the beverage that we drink it as here. And even potentially the warmth of the tea, and it warms your body as well. It helps protect against some of the cold, not the cold illness, which possibly it might, but the cold meaning the temperatures. And then also it's obviously used as a social outlet. We all know many areas in Europe and even here, we have teas, high tea time, little tea parties. And in Britain, tea drinking became basically a national obsession, as many are probably already aware. So the English tea, this dates back to a princess that her name was, let me find it here, Portuguese princess named Catherine. And she actually came to London with essentially a large chest of tea as part of her dowry. So that's where it sort of got brought over. But due to its expense, taking the tea was possibly only the, only thing in the 17th century that really then led to the clipper ships that brought tea from Asia, so that it was a better means of transport for the tea to get from the Orient. And then also in the 19th century, most English subjects were enjoying tea on a daily basis. It became an everyday life event. And then we have the afternoon tea, which was created by Anna, the Duchess of Bedford, in 1840. And it was basically her way to help alleviate that sinking feeling in the afternoon, where she would have a light snack and a cup of tea around 4 o'clock. And then that high tea was kind of cultivated in Britain, where it was consisted of a meal with potted meats, fish, cheese, salads, sweets, and a pot of strong tea. And that became known as the high tea at about 6 o'clock or so, as in the evening after work. So here is a lovely picture of one of the tea customs in Asia. So in China, we have the Sung tea ceremony, and that was really a use of powdered teas in ceramics, which later evolved into the well-known Japanese tea ceremony. And then the Japanese tea ceremony, typically influenced by Zen Buddhism, where they use a powdered green tea or matcha and is commercially prepared by a skilled practitioner. This ceremony of doing a Japanese tea ceremony can actually take many years and often last a lifetime of training and study of the tea in order to be, essentially a formal tea ceremony that they like to perform. So tea here in the US, it is a popular beverage, obviously, where we do know a lot of this. It is in the early years, it became popular with different colonies. We here have quite a few people who love our tea. We have about 3.6 billion gallons of tea annually. That is basically 65% brewing in the use of tea bags. But unfortunately, the tea consumption actually declined a bit with the taxation without representation, and that really became known as the Boston Tea Party. And then we had a lot of areas where we we're able to see how the only area in the US, the only plantation is down in South Carolina. So I want to find you this information. In 1888, the South Carolina Dr. Charles Shepherd had this idea to have this Pinehurst tea plantation, and his award-winning teas were grown in the plantation until his death in 1915. And tea plants from that plantation were moved to a different location in South Carolina, which is Wadmalaw Island. And that is the Charleston tea plantation, originally known that the property was purchased and turned to a commercially owned tea plantation, and that's now the Charleston tea plantation, is the only place where tea is 100% grown and produced in the US. The plantation is now owned by Bigelow, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with that tea brand, and it is a living piece of history. So it's kind of nice to know that American history has its own little story about how we have tea grown here. So this is what I started to say earlier, that we have about 3.6 billion gallons of tea annually here in the US, and it is consumed quite a bit. A lot of it is using tea bags, about 84% with black tea and about 15% with green tea. And then we also have iced tea, and that would, be kind of produced from one of those teas as well. And then in the South and Northeast regions, we have the most tea drinkers, just, kind of our love here. We love tea here in the Northeast area. So tea worldwide, just to show a little picture about some of the popular areas where tea can be seen over the globe. And it is second only to water as a beverage consumption. So really water and then tea are the highest consumed beverages in the world. And there are some areas where tea has been manufactured beverages, but even over coffee, and including coffee, the world consumption is equal. So tea is grown primarily in those mountainous areas of the world where it's 3,000 to 7,000 feet above sea level. And the leading tea producing countries would be Argentina, China, India, Indonesia, Kenya, Malawi, I can't ever say that word, and then Sri Lanka, Tanzania, and Taiwan. So those are the leading producers of tea. Okay. Let's get down here. So our classifications for tea, I just wanted to go over this a little bit with you, that we have 4 types of true tea. So true tea comes from that tea plant we talked about, the Camellia sinensis. I can't say that word either. We have a white tea, and then we have a green tea, which a lot of people are familiar with. So white tea is not as popular because it's very immature parts of the leaf. And then we have green tea, which is a little bit more mature. We have oolong tea, that's a true tea as well. And then we have black tea. So the process method determines the type of tea. So we're going to go over that in a moment. But we also just wanted to mention that is classified by the amount of oxidation that the leaves have received. So this, I will show you some pictures here. This is a picture of our white tea leaves. You can notice that they're lighter in color and that the leaves are not, just as sort of that medium to dark green color that you might see in a loose tea. And white tea is made from those younger, tender leaves. They undergo no oxidation. And this is at least processed where all tea varieties and the leaves are handpicked just before the leaf actually opens. If you notice in the picture, they're kind of tightly held together. And as a result, it just produced very small amounts and pretty expensive in order for the plant because it's so young as a tea leaf. And the taste is pretty mild if you've ever had it. I don't know that I've ever personally had a straight white tea. Most white teas that I've had have been flavored in some way. And normally it's a fruit added to it. So I've had like a blueberry white tea. I've had, some of those sort of not overly fragrant fruit flavors, but just enough to give it a little bit of something. So the green tea leaves here in this picture are when they are a little bit more mature and it's processed it is processed differently than the other three types of tea, where green, the fermentation oxidation phase is eliminated and the enzymes are destroyed by application of heat with either steam, or which is the traditional Japanese method, or by dry cooking in hot pans, the traditional Chinese method, before the leaves are rolled and fired. So the elimination of that fermentation step occurred because of the word fermentation. To explain the processing tea led some to believe that it was forming an alcohol, which is not the case. So this was prohibited by certain religions and political leaders at the time. So green tea is always been popular in the East and has been increasing in popularity in the West due to its health claims. So we'll discuss a little bit more about that in a moment. So here are some oolong tea pictures. And this is a type of tea that the oxidation is occurring for 2 to 3 days, if not longer. But it is typically longer, obviously, than the green tea, but not as long as black tea. So notice the leaves are quite dark, but not as light as those green teas. And the oolong tea is kind of the midway between your black and your green tea in both strength and color. So this is just, so you know, again, they're all coming from the same plant. It's just how we are processing them that they are getting their difference in categories. Here is a picture of black tea leaves. And the black tea leaves are also ones where you can see pretty much are black. And this is the most popular variety of tea. About 98% of tea is sold as black tea. This is the complete oxidation for the black tea, right? That's why the color is so dark. And black tea has been graded accordingly to the guidelines from the British tea industry since the 19th century. So the tea leaves for this are either whole leaves, which are thought to be produced with the best flavor and classified by size and how they are rolled. And then we also can have it where it's a broken leaf, where they might not have as quite high quality of a tea, but still would taste very good. And then there's even tea dust, which is just smaller pieces of leaves, or fannings, they call it, which are even smaller, more, I would say dust-like, but dust is like a small leaf, and then fannings are like really more like dust. And those are what often is used in tea bags or in that brick tea that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so our tea varieties, just to go over this a little bit, we have a few different things going on here. And these, again, would be identified by region or estate. And we have the Assam tea, and that here would be a black tea named after the region in India. And it's known for its body and briskness. It's got a malty flavor, strong and bright color. And this is a great tea as well. Then we have the Darjeeling tea. And the Darjeeling tea is one that the English, Irish, and Scottish breakfast teas are commonly found in those varieties. And it is a black tea and has traditionally prized above all other black teas. And so we have the Assam tea. So as I was mentioning, that would be your English, Irish, Scottish breakfast. And then we have the Darjeeling tea, where they're traditionally sort of that wonderful tea that's a thin-bodied tea, a floral aroma, and then those are typically produced in India. Most teas are familiar with blends or different teas. We often get that. So something like a Marsala chai or a spiced Marsala chai is a popular variety that we call chai tea. That's the picture that you see there. And chai is a Hindu word for tea. And in India, where the tea originated, the correct term is Masala chai, which means spiced tea. So if you've ever trying to figure out what the difference is, you might see tea boxes with just the term chai tea, but you also might see masala chai, which just means spiced chai. So a recipe, there's really not something specific. However, in general, there are 4 components, and that would be basically a black tea, a sweetener of some sort, milk or other creamer, and then spices like cardamom, cinnamon, and even ginger. So different chais could have different varieties. You might have one that is particularly spicy and you feel it like in the back of your throat. You might have one that is, kind of more mild and things like that. You might have a vanilla chai. They add some vanilla flavor to it, things like that. So teas can also be identified in a subgroup of 4 tea areas. And for example, we have orange pekoe tea, which is actually a classification of black tea, not for its flavor. Actually, the orange refers to the rather orangey yellow color of the dried tea flower buds of the plant. Then we also have tea subgroups like yellow tea, which is a high quality tea served at the imperial court, and the kuchika, I can't say that word, tea, but both yellow and the other subtypes of green tea. So these are wonderful varieties to try out as well. I'll show you some pictures here. So this is a variety of tea that is interesting to see, kind of a winter tea. It's a type of green tea that is made from the twigs and old leaves of the dormant plant. So you can see here, it kind of looks like little tea sticks in the picture, but they are roasted over a fire, and it's an inexpensive tea that is developed in Japan, and it's known for its light flavor, fresh green aroma, and a very light yellow green color. And it's thinner and less green infused, and it's a higher quality of tea. We also have many varieties, perhaps thousands, that all stem from our 4 main types of white, green, oolong, and black. So what's in tea? Let's talk about that a little bit. So we have here some of the energy that it provides us, and we have about 8 ounces of brewed tea that can provide us, depending on what type of tea, a little bit of a stimulant like caffeine. So about 47 milligrams of caffeine per 8 ounces versus decaf. And even though we have decaf tea, then we think it doesn't have caffeine, but there actually is a little bit of caffeine in our decaf. Only about 2 milligrams, so it's not much, but it's not 100% decaf. And then, so the tea provides a minuscule amount of energy in the form of carbohydrates, only about 2 calories and in per 8 ounces, and minor amounts of minerals like magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium, just a very tiny small amount nutritionally. It also might have a few other things like zinc and copper, manganese, and just different vitamins and minerals that are good for you, and it's good for us to have, but we're not really calling it a main source of these items. So it's important to note that caffeine is in some teas, and if you're looking to not have caffeination, you want to make sure that you're either having that decaf with just a tiny little bit of caffeine, or having herbal teas that do not have caffeine in them. So just to give you an example, a cup of tea with the 47 milligrams of caffeine, but we also have a fresh brewed cup of coffee that is almost double. It's about 95 milligrams. And then we have, let's say, a hot cup of cocoa, hot chocolate, that's only 4 milligrams of caffeine. But we also could have like a cola beverage that has caffeine in it, and that's about 30 milligrams. So that's still less. So coffee would be the highest, then you have your tea, then you would have like a caffeinated soda or cola, and then hot cocoa is very minimal as well. But tea also contains something called theobromine, which in small amounts is good for us as well. It's about 5 milligrams per 8 ounces, and it can actually affect the central nervous system. So it might give you a little bit of a stimulating effect, which probably helped with some of that meditation we talked about and that mental acuity, but it's just something to note as well. So what is in our tea? Just to go over that a little bit more. We have the catechins, or EGCG. You see that a lot of the time on a lot of our packaging materials. And this here is found mostly in green tea. And this can help with certain areas that they're looking for to help maybe some of the health benefits. We have polyphenols. This is the list of all the polyphenols, but these are them specifically. So these are the ones that are found in green tea. These are the ones found in black tea, and then these are the ones found in oolong tea. And these polyphenols are actually a group of compounds found in many plant foods, so not just tea, such as berries, dark chocolate, and most of our very colorful things, but it's particularly in tea as well. And it's found that they're still doing studies, but because of the possible health benefits, it could be a functional food, as we were mentioning earlier. So here, the effect of tea processing on the polyphenol content. We just want to go over that a little bit. And here you can see that white tea, when it's steamed and dried, we talked about that oxidation process. We have green tea where it's withered and then steamed or pan fried and then dried out there. And as you can look through the chart and see the different processes, partial oxidation for the oolong tea, and then that full oxidation to get that deep dark color for the black tea. This here, the process changes the compounds that are present in the tea, and that's where the link to certain health benefits might reside. So black tea is oxidized for up to 4 hours, and oolong tea is oxidized for that 2 to 3 hours, and the oxidation results in the chemical reaction of the tea leaves, basing that different color and flavor that you have from your teas. So we'll talk a little bit about the research here and the possible connection to our health benefits. So, some things to mention that in Chinese medicine, sorry, I'm just trying to flip my notes over here. In Chinese medicine, there's been benefits to tea for your health as well. And it's a traditional form in its beneficial mode for thousands and thousands of years. Research has been shown that it's been looked at for over 30 years, that we are really seeing the positive aspects of tea and very indicative of the health benefits. So a lot of studies are being done with humans with mixed results, and we're trying to find out some of this smaller quantities of tea consumed by humans compared to the larger amounts that were done on animal studies to see how they compare. It's also potential, the bioavailability that we're talking about and how the polyphenols can be limited, but the caffeine and theanine can be highly available, that they're looking for that stimulation that we mentioned earlier. And also we were looking at overall as a whole, the type of tea and sample size is something that each study determines how much we can interpret from it, and much of the research on humans have only had small sample sizes. So that's just something they're still looking at with the research that they're looking at. So some of that research even potentially has some benefits for cancer prevention. So animal models have shown that it could potentially lower the risk of cancer in humans, and that it's been demonstrated on specific organ sites and studies for animal models. But the animal studies have shown that tea may inhibit actually some tumor growth, and in a digestive tract, generally, it's more specifically in the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and small intestine and colon. So that's some possible benefits for cancer prevention. And a lot of these studies happen to be inconsistent, but may reduce the risk of even bladder cancer as well. But there's only limited evidence on that. And of course, the studies are going to be ongoing because they always want to find out more and see how we can continue with certain things like that. All right. So metabolic syndrome, weight, and diabetes. Here again, there's been animal studies done with this here and at how it might affect triglycerides, some of the abnormal blood glucose levels, high blood pressure, and lowering the HDL cholesterol. So these are some of the things where a lot of the studies continue, and that some of the data has been inconsistent, but has had many positive outcomes. So because of those green tea extracts we talked about with the polyphenols, those are the things, that's why you'll see on some marketing that it might help with weight loss and things, but these are still inconclusive and not 100%. So there's a lot of studies remaining. But for type 2 diabetes specifically, a lot of studies have shown that 3 to 4 cups a day can be a potential benefit to possibly reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. So then we also have the benefit to cardiovascular disease, and there's been different studies to reduce the risk of coronary artery disease, possible risk for stroke, cholesterol levels. We just talked about the HDL levels. So our cholesterol levels, we have HDL and LDL, and HDL cholesterol, you want that to be high because that's beneficial for that to be high, and you want your LDL cholesterol to be low. So this could be potentially one of those benefits. And we also have studies that show there's black tea may not have a protective effect. So we want to keep that in mind as well. Let's move on here. So the neurodegenerative diseases that may occur, green tea can potentially reduce the risk for certain things in cognitive decline, like Alzheimer's disease, potentially some dementias, possible reduction in risk for Parkinson's. And we have those amino acids, the theanine in the green tea, that may relieve symptoms of anxiety and that angst some may feel, help improve that memory and attention. We talked about that and the benefits earlier with mental acuity. And these are being studied for things such as depression, stress, and insomnia as well. So there are some benefits to a green tea and the drinks that we have available to us there. So coronavirus and tea. So this has been shown that some of the properties of green tea can help protect against different viral infections, because you're basically going to stimulate your immune system, and that the different benefits of black tea can help against certain things like hepatitis C. And the simulated studies, you know, these are very new. So we're going to still suggest a possible protection, but obviously many of our studies have to continue and have a lot of long-term, potential benefits. But the tea consumption campaigns like Sri Lanka and India Tea Association have shown that this could be a possible positive result. So our research in review, there's a lot of inconsistencies with human studies. Some of the animal studies have been a little bit more positive, but we still have to have some human studies continued before we can get to conclusive data. The antioxidant activity may help with some of the disease preventions, which is wonderful to hear. Moderate intake of tea is recommended, so we don't want to overdo it. But just a moderate, everything in moderation, honestly, but that would be a recommendation, because you don't want to be overstimulated with some of the caffeine, but you want to make sure that you are having moderate intake. And really, bottom line with most of this, if not all of our programs, is more research is always needed. So some of the other health benefits, tea as a beverage actually can potentially decrease iron absorption. So that's something we need to be aware of. Protection against bone fractures, because it can help your immune systems be stronger and help promote your bone health. Potentially oral health and promoting that. And then also vitamin K is found in green tea. So we need to note that as well as a very hot tea and the GI tract cancer risk, that we need to be mindful of that with our caffeine. So I'm not one who drinks super hot tea to begin with. It burns my mouth, but we want to make sure that we're, again, everything in moderation. And then green tea extracts, high doses of that can be toxic. So we talked about the ECGC, and we want to make sure that we're not overdoing it there. So decaffeinated tea, it wouldn't be good if we didn't discuss that a little bit. So they are super critical of carbon dioxide, which is the best option currently to make sure that we have a clean, safe, non-toxic tea that we want to have. And also that it protects tea taste and promoting those components there. So we also have some benefits to different types of tea, even though it is decaffeination. This is the process in which it goes through using some methylene fluoride and things like that. It's potentially a carcinogen. Sustainable tea. So this is a label you see here, the USDA organic label, where it must be certified and approved by certain organizations and in order to be listed as an organic substance. It focuses on the good quality soil, the plant health, and the harvesting, and all of the wonderful benefits of being organic and making sure that there are no added chemicals and things like that to the plant. Sustainable tea, you will see this fair trade certified label if it is a sustainable tea, which is where there are strict standards for working safe environments, protecting the environment in which it's grown, also building sustainable livelihoods for those people harvesting, and empowering and uplifting the communities in which that would be, whatever, it's not just for tea, this certification, but whatever the product is. And it could include things like beverages, food, flowers, clothing, health and beauty products as well. Another for sustainable tea is the Rainforest Alliance, which you'll see this cute little label with this little frog. And this here also protects against shade trees and wildlife corridors, having it improve the productivity and income potential. So this is, their motto is a world where people and nature live and thrive in harmony. So this is where the Rainforest Alliance really comes in, that we aren't, destroying the areas. So preparing your tea, we want to make sure that you are doing it properly. So you can use a teapot, and we want to bring that to a boil. Try to use filtered water, which is best because then you're not getting extra tastes and flavors. And use about 1 cup at a time, and you want to steep your tea for about 3 to 5 minutes and then remove, let's say, the tea bag, or if you have loose tea, things like that. Hot water for green tea is about 1 minute steeping. Oolong tea would be about 5 to 7 minutes, and white tea would be anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes. Just to show you a little graphic here, drinking tea as part of your healthful diet includes other plant foods as well. So as we mentioned, water here on the bottom is the largest consumed beverage, and then we have tea and coffee unsweetened, that is, as the second level of beverages that are drank most commonly. And then it would be low-fat milk, and then it would go up to your things that are less healthy, like sweetened beverages and some of the fruit juices that have sugars in them, as well as other alcoholic beverages and things like that. So this is just a Chinese poem. When I drink tea, I am conscious of peace. The cool breath of heaven rises in my sleeves and blows my cares away. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying about having that wonderful ceremony of having tea. It's a wonderful way to relax in the evening. Note, like I said, something like sleepy time tea or chamomile tea, even though the word tea is on the box, it's actually a tisane and not a true tea, because it's not coming from the tea plant. That's why a lot of your herbal teas you'll see are coming from different herbs and maybe some plant other than the tea plant. So it is wonderful to have those teas in the evening. If you're not looking for a source of caffeine, absolutely, I would encourage that as well. But getting the health benefits we talked about from true tea is where we're looking. So I mentioned earlier that we have functional foods, and there are a series of 6. We had just done the chocolate program. We have one on coffee, berries, and vegetables and fungi, mushrooms. So hopefully you have found some benefits here and enjoy the program. If you have some questions, I will take them now.
You may need to unmute yourself, which you're welcome to do, or you can put your hand up, or you can use the chat window. So any one of those would be fine. Rachel, I think you were like super thorough. I have to say that was fantastic, and I am ready to go get my little cup of tea right now.
There's a lot of information, a lot.
I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that
Yeah.
high tea and the
Yes,
noon
it's that
tea
time
for
of day.
sure.
Yes.
It certainly is.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We really appreciate this. This is it's always interesting to take something you enjoy and learn that, that it can actually really be good for you. And
Yes.
I like the
Yes.
reminder to always keep in mind that everything is
Yes.
still being researched. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yes.
So thank you again, Rachel.
Yes.
We look forward to more of your programs in the future. And thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon as we discuss tea. So
I see one question that
Oh,
asked
you
about the
do?
slides. So I will just mention that being that this is recorded, if the program is posted somewhere or sent out, that's where you can review the slides at that point.
Okay, yes, thank you. I missed that one. Yep. So I will actually send a link out to all of you, since anyone who registered. And then if anybody else wants to see it, Rachel, can we put it on our website or something?
Absolutely,
If that would
sure.
be okay.
Mhm.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, very good. Thank you
Great.
all. Have a great day. Enjoy. Happy spring almost.
Enjoy your tea.
Thank you. So I'm going to end the session now. Take care, everyone.
Have a good one.